Hey, welcome to Bram Reno Podcast. Don't even know what episode this is, Zach. Do we have a number? 1100? No? So today we have an amazing guy, just a really good friend of mine. And, man, we go back a little ways, 6 years, right? Yeah. But have my buddy, Rob Gutierrez, a Air Force E9, who is also you're a CCT, JTAC guy, got some amazing stories of stuff that you've been through. But my favorite part is that you are a San Diego native.
That's right.
From National City.
Yep.
Yeah, representing.
That good National City, man. Some people call it Nasty City back then, but it's just National City.
And hearing, like, when I first met you, you know, we were both just in the same room. We were over here over in the locker room, and we were just kind of looking at each other, just kind of like, what that guy's about? I wonder what that guy's about, you know? And then we just got to talking, just right away, just hit it off, and it was so fun. But then to hear your stories, but the best stories you got about your growing up.
Oh yeah,
and the stuff that you went through growing up, and how you grew up, and who you grew up around, and then the direction that your life was going. It looked a certain way, and then all of a sudden you made a shift. But hey, I want you guys to welcome our guest, Mr. Rob Gutierrez. Woo!
Yeah, thanks.
We're missing Sam. Sam's not here for the added claps. But Rob, welcome, Bram Reno Podcast. Love it that you're here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bram. I just appreciate the time, you know, and when I'm in town, to be able to come out here and hang out with you. Every time I come down to San Diego and stuff like that, whether I'm visiting for work or whatever the case, I learn something every time. And that's what's it's valuable to me, you know, not only our friendship, but like I learn something every time. Whether it's, you know, how to neck crank somebody and strangle somebody, you know, break somebody's wrist, you know, or anything, but I just learned something. That's why, to me, it's valuable.
Yeah.
And if you're not around people that you're constantly learning from, especially people that are better than you, smarter than you, man, you're not going to make yourself better, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you just consistently put yourself around better people.
Yeah, Zach.
You just learn.
We trained this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Got on the mats and got amongst it.
IE beat me up.
Yeah. Didn't happen. So my buddy, that's you saw him with the boot.
Yeah.
We call him Bald Matt. You know, he was over there, and I had told him about you before, and so I meant to introduce you guys, but then you had to bounce, and he was like, "Hey, was that your buddy?" I was like, "Oh man, I forgot to introduce you guys," but you know, and I was texting with him earlier. I said, "Yeah, yep, you know, Rob's coming by. We're gonna do a podcast." He's like, "Oh man," he goes, "I make you feel worse than you already do for not introducing us," but he goes, "Man, but you know, tell him I said hi. Tell him next time I want to meet him." You know, So Bald Matt says hi.
Oh, cool.
Great training partner, an amazing guy.
Hey, Bald Matt, how you doing?
Well, I told him I would give him some love tonight, you know. Yeah. So, but right on. So tell me let's start. I want to hear about your growing up, because when we start putting your story together a little bit more later, like with the military stuff and how that happened, some of the operations that you were involved in, amazing stories that they are, it adds more context to it when we know who the man is that's behind the military actions that happen, right? So tell me about growing up. Tell our listeners about growing up, because it's
goofy, man. There's a lot of goofy stuff. The trials and tribulations, I guess. Some things are painful, and you learn by trial and error. But I grew up in National City. Basically, real simple kid, man. Single household. You know, my dad worked hard, and he was a painter at a painting an auto body shop in La Mesa, and then he became like the paint shop manager and stuff like that, and whatever the case. But like, man, it's National City at the time, in the 80s, it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? But actively in sports at an early age, you know, in National City, it's not uncommon to like throw fists. You know what I mean? At a young age, you know what I mean? So I think my dad saw that, and he was like, "Hey, you know, after the beatdowns I took as a young kid," and he's like, "I'm gonna put you in karate first." And I was just like, was karate, you know, and all I saw was the Karate Kid,
Right.
you know what I mean? So I'm just like so at home, you know, and he's like, no, we'll find somewhere. Luckily, in National City where I was at, like probably, I don't know, I'm gonna say 4 or 5 blocks away, you know, there was a Taekwondo school.
Perfect.
And man, he just put me in there. He just saw how it was ran. The lead instructor that ran the school, his name was James Wilson, super nice guy. Came from he ran more of a military style class. Like everyone did push-ups on their knuckles. You know what I mean? You warmed up in a run, and it was just like you learned a lot, but you hurt a lot too. Yeah. So
how old were you when this was going on?
I was like 6, 7.
Nice.
Right. And I did that all the way through high school, right, until I got my black belt and stuff like that. But, you know, when you're going to school or whatever the case, and it's just like anything else. Like I was a young kid, I didn't know, because my dad worked all day, right, and I had younger siblings and then an older sister, and you know, trying to play sports, whatever the case, whenever I could, baseball or whatever the case. But like, and you get in a lot of, you know, park fights, stuff like that, whatever the case, outside of baseball, you know, whatever the case. So I just learned how to defend myself. And then going through like junior high, you know what I mean? And down where I went to it's called Granger Junior High. Probably not the best neighborhood. I mean, there's a lot worse, but out there, you know, a little trouble here and there, fisticuffs here and there too. Yeah. You know what I mean? But when you start knowing these martial arts, you know, they start teaching these things of confidence and basically, you know, to regulate yourself, right? To understand that you have a skill, and that skill can literally, you know, kick the crap out of someone, you can hurt somebody. So just to control yourself, right? But to be honest, man, it was really hard to control. So, yeah, you know,
a lot of kids, I mean, it's like kids in general, man, it's like, it's hard to get kids to understand that there's a right way and a wrong way, and a right time and a wrong time for certain levels of violence.
Yes.
And getting them to understand, like, what level of violence is it going to take to get me out of this situation, or is it no violence at all? But right. It's just that the kids are their expectations and the way they view violence is so different, because it's changed with Grand Theft Auto. And
yes,
some of those other things, it's just like, I was kicking him, but I couldn't hit X fast enough. It's like, no, this was real life. This dude was really seriously kicking the crap out of you.
Oh yeah. Well, for me, it was because I'm the oldest boy, right, in my family. I had 2 younger siblings, and I had an older sister that was 2 grades above me. So my dad always told me, is just like, hey, I don't care what happens, but you're gonna protect them at all costs. Like that's it, right? You do this, and this is your job. So I was like, okay. And where I was at, like, everybody had brothers, like, close in age, going to the same school. So if you fought one, you fought like 2 or 3 all the time. So it was like beat down central, you know what I mean? If you got into it here and there. And especially like always the surrounding neighborhoods or whatever the case, trying to avoid more like the ongoing like gangs and stuff like that. And that type of like peer pressure to join or whatever the case. You know what I mean? They're just like, nah, I'm good. You know what I mean? Because I was busy and I knew it was wrong, right? And on top of that, I was actually more fearful of my dad beating me up, you know, than them. So having that confidence or understanding, but like that, when you say that level of violence, it gave me an amount of self-confidence that when those interactions did happen or somebody tried, I was like, okay, you sure you want some? Like, and then when you're doing that and you're kind of being a smartass about it, it turns out you're instigating it. You know what I mean? They're like, right. Yeah, I want some. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Right. And just like anything else outside the school, certain area, just throwing fists. And then for me, throwing kicks, you know what I mean? And then when you're clubbing people with your feet, you know, and it's fast, and then you see what happens, that level, you're like, oh, snap, I just did that. You know what I mean? Your confidence goes up a little more, but then you're also scared because you're a young kid. Like, you're scared. Like, dude, did I just kill that dude? Like, you know? Yeah. You never know. You know what I mean? when you see them and you give them, and they're not expecting it, they're expecting you to throw fist or whatever the case, and you're just like, oh, okay, wham, right across the face, right behind the ear, right in the temple, and they're just like laid out cold. You're like, ooh, damn, I gotta go, right? And running.
Yeah.
I gotta get out of here, right? And then
That's what I like about jiu-jitsu, though, too. It's like, I think stand-up is good, like Western boxing, Muay Thai, that stuff, key. It's always to know how to be on your feet and be able to handle yourself.
Mhm.
But there's something about jiu-jitsu when you get on the ground, and sure, it goes out the door. You can't handle multiple attackers. You can't handle multiple opponents, but if you have a person that needs to be controlled, you can control them. You can hurt them. You can injure them, knowing the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
You can kill them if you have to. Yeah. So you have this big, wide range of things that you really don't have. You can have control and everything else, but still, it's like you can feel the resistance when you're starting to get close to popping a joint, and
100%.
But standing up is like, you crack a dude, you're just like, that had way more effect on it than I
envisioned, or that I was like, I wasn't trying to get that effect, like, and people kind of look at it and they're like, oh, because everyone looks at MMA now, right? Whatever the case. But if you're looking at like self-defense and stuff like that, especially as a young kid, and then training where I was at, like, man, I went like 4 times a week, and I'd be there from 5 to like 9 p.m. training.
Nice.
Do
you train? No jiu-jitsu for you. No stand-up for you.
No, it's a verbal beatdown. It's verbal jiu-jitsu I get.
Yeah. she just tell you something.
Yeah. So, and when you start learning these things, like, for instance, that's where I was like, oh man, I got to control this, right? My best friend growing up, Victor, was always like nervous because he was my buddy. Like, he's my best friend. And I always tell him like, yo, I'm going to go fight this afternoon. He's just like, oh, dude, because he's like, he can't leave me. He's my best friend. He's just like, my problems are his problems. His problems are my problems. Yeah. It's, who says it? Kevin Hart says it, you know what I mean? In a stand-up piece, he's like, my problems are your problems are my problems. My BS is yours is mine. So he'd be there, and I'd be waiting because, when you talk about multiple people, you know what I mean? And I learned this, like, I would just go, oh, and, when you're squaring up against 2 brothers that want to beat you up, you're just like, okay, I'm just going to line them up. And you learn, like, I line one behind the other, just keep moving. Everyone else is going to move, and you keep moving, you line them up, and then, bam, there's the first one. And then after that, the next one. And then after that, you tell them, best friend, let's get out of here. And we're gone, right? But you just don't know because you figure out these things too. Where, I mean, you kick somebody right underneath the nose, and you hit them hard enough, man, you'll shove that straight up into their cranium. All that tissue and that bone. You don't even know it as a young kid because it's like especially when you're young like that, you start getting trained. It's like, and this is a goofy analogy, but I'd say it. It's like a baby snake.
Oh, I use that all the time.
You just don't know like how much venom is coming out on that bite. It's a lot.
I always use that with the guys that are just brand new to jiu-jitsu. They've been doing it for a month, and they're stupid strong and super athletic, and they know one move really well, and they are going to send it. I mean, they are going to go full every else, just like a baby snake. Doesn't know. He's giving all the venom.
Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things. And then, I mean, that was that. And then going to high school, you know what I mean? Instead of going to the high school I was supposed to, I went to a different school just because there was things going on that I had to go to that one. And then I was actually lucky. A friend of mine that actually lived in my neighbor, close to my neighbor that my dad knew. His dad was a high school coach, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna play football with this." So I went to Hilltop High School instead of Sweetwater High School. And then same thing, completely different from neighbors. So I don't know anybody there at all. I just show up. I'm like, oh, what's up? And just like anything else, there's a bunch of testosterone young men. Everyone was trying to test you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially when you're trying to try out for sports and you're not the person that they've known and grown up with, So, a couple things here and there, it is what it is. But overall, I can't complain. You know what I mean?
Right. How was your transition to the military? What was the decision-making point for you going into the military?
It was 2 things. First one was 9/11, right?
Right.
And then the second one, I had been out of school. Southwestern College wasn't doing it for me.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you're a meter reader for San Diego Gas and Electric and you're reading meters all day, I tell you what, you get some cardio in. Because in the city of San Diego, especially in the counties and stuff like that, I mean, you read 847 to 1,000 meters a day, right? And people are like, oh, that's insane. Well, don't forget, like there's an apartment complex that has 500 places and it's just one big wall and you're just like, do with your tablet. Like back then, it's a big piece of tablet and you're getting numbers in. But then you're moving on to the next house to house to house to house. And like, I would just run it because I didn't know, I also grew up kind of like working for my dad a little bit and you just knew to hustle, like get it done, hustle. Like there's no, like you take a break here and there, but just work. So I would just run from house to house. And then depending on the neighborhood at the time, in the 2000s, when you're reading meters in Logan Heights or Sherman or all these other places where it's not so nice. And apparently their electric bill or gas bill is like through the roof. And, you're just like meter reader and they're just like, hey, and you're just like, and they're just like, why's the price? I'm like, I don't make the prices, bro. I just read the meters, dude. That's it, Yeah. Or they're just like sicking dogs on you and stuff like that. It was that path, right? But then at the same time, I was making a little bit of money. It was a little bit tough. And then I just started going down this different path of the wrong way, where it was just trouble, right? And I came to a conclusion, like I was already on that path, right? And right when September 11th hit, I was just like, saw what was going on TV. Because during the day, I would work. At night, I'd go out with my friends. And I'd go party, probably doing dumb stuff. So really what it came down to was...
So how old are you at this point?
I'm
18, 19?
No, I'm 20 at this point.
20?
Yeah. So, and, some things in life just didn't work out. And I moved out of the parents' house. Tried that. Didn't work. I didn't like it. And then I got a taste of being an adult for a little bit. Like, damn, rent's expensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just like I said, going down the wrong path, trying to seek different ways to make money, and it just wasn't working. And then, like I said, September 11th, that morning, when I was just like, what's going on? And for some reason, I was just super mad. I was like I was really angry. Like, I just can't believe this has happened to my country. And granted, this is San Diego. It's a military town, but the military was like the least of things for me to ever join at the time. But when I saw that was going on TV, I was like, dude, I'm quitting my job and joining the military now. I thought that if I joined that day, I'll be shipped out like in 2 days. Because I'm like, oh, we're going to war. They're going to need, right? So...
Well, it didn't happen that way?
It didn't.
That didn't go down like that?
No, not at all, actually. So, I called the station and I was just like, yo.
Got this delayed entry program thing.
And I didn't know, so I just made this, bonehead decision. I was like, yo, I'm going to join the military. And they're like, well, you still got to come to work. I'm like, I'm going to take the day off. And they're just like, yeah, you can't take the day off like that. And I was just like, all right, I quit. And they're just like, you just can't quit. I'm like, I just did. And I just hung up, right? They call me back. They're like, can you just turn your stuff in? You know what I mean? I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that too. So I literally went to the recruiting station and it's funny because like I said, in National City, there's the Navy, Marine Corps, Army, and then there's the Air Force one. And I'm like, coming from my place and I get in the parking lot and I'm just like, all right. I thought they were going to be like open arms, like everyone, come on in, we're going to war. Like, come on in, you know what I mean? Dead. Nobody's in there. And I'm like, what? What is happening? And I see this dude bebopping. He literally had like a briefcase in his hand. And he goes to the Air Force recruiting. I was like, hey, man, are you guys hiring? Stuff like that? And he goes, man, we're always hiring. I was like, sweet, because I need a job, because I just quit my job. And he's just like, I got tons of jobs. What do you want to do? And I was just like, you're watching what's going on TV. And he's just like, yeah. I was like, we're going to go to war. Probably, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, I want to go to war. I want to fight. No lie. Recruiter was like, you do know this is the Air Force, right? Like, straight up told me that. I'm like, for a little bit, I was just like, oh, what? You know what I mean? He's like, wait, but he's like, I got 2 jobs. They definitely do. He's like, I've been here for like 4 years, man. No one's ever made it. And right then I was just like,
I want that one.
yeah,
I did the same thing. Yeah,
I'm in, dude. And he's like, well, I have this job here. It's called pararescue, and they like rescue people and stuff like that. And it's like medicine. They're like, they're medics and stuff like that. Then I got this one called like CCT, it's called combat control. They like land aircraft and drop bombs. And I was like, do those guys kill people? And they're like, he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I want that job. He's like, you don't want to do this one? I'm like, no. I don't want to do medicine. Like, I don't want to save people. I want to go kill people. We're going to go to war. He's like, oh, okay, cool. So, at that point, that's when my plan started, right? And then I was just like, all right, dude, let's sign me up, dude. Like, I'm thinking it's just like literally just a sheet of paper. You sign your life away. See you later. Way wrong. Samsonite, I was way off. And so he's
I got
like,
that reference, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
yeah, that one. Only us old guys get that one.
Right.
You know, so he goes through all this paperwork and stuff like that. He's like, all right, dude, well, you got to take this test. And I was like, what test? And he's like, it's called a physical ability stamina test. And I was just like, all right, what it is? He's like, you got to run a mile and a half. You got to do push-ups. You got to do pull-ups. You got to do sit-ups. And you got to swim. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I could do that, dude. I'm like, I'm in shape. Because at the time, like, I didn't not go to the gym. Like, I still worked out. And then I ran from house to house. When you normal route could be 4 to 6 miles in a day, easy. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay. And then, I boogie board out. I sponged in La Jolla and IB. So I was like, I can swim. Yeah. Went out. It took me to Miramar. Naval Air Station, I think, in Miramar, on the track. Crushed the run. Calisthenics, got it. Jump in that pool, big fat 0, dude. Oh. Like, after the first, 120 meters, dude, dead.
Gas.
I'm just, gassed. I finished the 500, because it's 500 meters. And he goes, hey, man, you failed. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, dude, the doggy paddle doesn't count. And I was like, but I finished it. He's like, you got to do the breaststroke, the side stroke, and that's really it. And I was just like, and freestyle, I'm sorry. And I was just like, dude, that's tough. And he's just like, yeah, dude, you got to come back. So I was like, okay, cool. So I had to wait. At that point, dude, it just sucked. No job. Wanted it really just like a hard spot, because then I was like, I can't go home. I told my parents I was going to be gone. Like, failure wasn't a thing. Like, you first of all, you never quit. Anything my parents put me in, they always told me, like, you never quit. Mm-hmm. If you don't like it, fine, finish the season, but you never quit, right? You got to finish it. At that point, I thought I was like quitting, and I was just like, nah. Dude, in my truck, bro, staying at friends' houses, like going to the National City pool, asking the lifeguards and stuff, please teach me how to swim. Like, I need to swim because I need to join the military, and I'm just what I'm trying to do. Dude, picking up, there's a lot of gross things out there, but when you go to a public pool, like cleaning those bathrooms are the worst. Picking up trash from, inner city kids, you know what I mean? Yeah. Is disgusting, just any crappy job they gave it to me, but I didn't care because I did it. And then they would just teach me how to swim. And I had lanes to myself and learned how to time, and it's over and over and over. And then 3 months came around and went back and took that pass test and crushed it. And I was like, all right, dude, can I go now? And they're like, yeah, dude, I'm going to ship you out like next week. Like, it was cool. Then I went home. I was like, hey guys, sorry. So I messed up, fix this. So I did this. Mom was really mad because they were like, why did you just come home? And I'm like, because I was really, it was hard to tell them, like, I failed at something. You know what I mean? But I refused to quit. So I was just like, no, I'm going to finish and come back. So I did. And then I was off
right.
At Air Force State to the Wild Blue Yonder.
Yeah. So that you went to boot camp, and boot camp, I can't imagine you struggling too much there.
Dude, real first time I ever went away from home.
Was it the first time you flew?
No, not the first time I flew. Flew like one time or twice because I traveled in Taekwondo, went to like Florida for competitions. I went to the competed to get on the U.S. Open on the Olympic team and stuff like that. So I traveled a little bit.
Yeah.
Most of it was driving, but then we flew like Florida and stuff. But first time away from home by myself, which was a shocker to me.
So boot camp. So you get to boot camp, and now you're in the Air Force, and you got your. So did they give you a contract, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the way I came in was kind of squirrely, right? So I showed up and I told them I wanted to be a combat controller, right? Well, now being in the position where I'm at, where I see how we write the contracts and we know it, it was totally screwed up. So I had a 1T2X contract, which is pararescue. But then on the line, it says combat control. So when I show up, it's like, you're going to INDOC. And I'm like, okay.
Or do they start them together, though, right?
Oh, at this point, combat control and the pararescue men had split from INDOC. Like, we split it, right?
Okay.
And changed the pipeline. Because during GWAT, they wanted more controllers faster. So they just changed the pipeline. INDOC is everything up front in 10 weeks. And they just crush you underwater and do everything. And then after that, it's just, free fall, dive school, paramedic, free fall, and all this other stuff. Combat control school, what we did was an orientation course up front, and they just slowly ramped up the pressure and the standards higher and higher and higher and higher, all the way to the apprentice course to the very end. So you'd have a big bunch, but you would attrit all the way to the very end. So you would see like 3 or 4 classes a year, maybe 5 classes of combat control orientation course, where they'd be like 30, 40, but only like 5 dudes are going to make it out of it. Right. And then you accumulate those 5 towards the end of the year when they're only running like 2 or 3 classes a year, and they're only graduating like 10 out of, everything.
Yeah.
Which is a very high attrition rate. I mean, it's still like in the 80%, plus, where PJ NDOC did it up front, where they would have 110, 30 guys, and you'd graduate 10 out of 130. You know what I mean? So,
what gets most guys in that line of work? Is it the cerebral part of it, or is it the physical?
Back then or now?
Oh, is it different?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about it.
Back then, it was the physical nature, right? Back then, the way we did it was only the strong will survive. Doesn't mean the smartest will, right? But the strong will, right? The ones with water confidence.
So now it's different because of technology?
A little bit, because we look for different attributes. We're looking to see if the individuals are they teachable, right? Are they durable? And what are their skills, right? What is their character, attributes we're looking for in the right teammates? Because you've probably seen it across the board. There are some operators out there that are like the fastest, strongest, best shooters or whatever, but they're the absolute worst teammates to have.
Yeah.
And I would rather give up a little bit of physical, speed and all this other stuff, and a little bit of tradecraft shift for a perfect teammate that's willing to be your teammate, and be that team.
I think I
like that middle ground.
Yeah. I've worked with about 5 or 6 CCTs, and every one of them was genius smart. Like all the ones that I worked with.
Not this one.
I would beg to differ. I was like, yeah. Nick was telling me about you out on the battlefield, the way that what you had to do, Redlands and Latin Long. Yeah. And then I asked you about it. And you were like, "Oh yeah, man, I had to take Lat Long. I had to convert it over to what did you like down to 1 to 50 or something like that, or and then you set it up. Fast mover loads it into his pod. Now he sees you down there, and he's like, "Cool, now I got you on a 10 digit," and you're like, "Cool, now you got me, awesome. 200 meters that way, and go ahead and fill it with some hot stuff." Just, that takes a dude with a big brain to do that, especially under those circumstances.
Right? Well, because now we're really, the same physical standards are there, right? But we're really, really looking for those team attributes within the cross. There's 7 of them. But I can't remember off the top of my head right now because I'm too busy thinking about staff work and TPS reports.
You got it. I got that one too.
Yeah, that one. So it's really the grind, right? And And the grind is still there, but now we look at it this way. So for instance, like in the Navy, right? Everything's up front, right? Through buds and like SEAL qualification and stuff like that. And after that is you're teaching them, right? So the Army is a little bit the same way too. And we shifted that dynamic, right? Yeah. Let's the term cut the fat in the beginning, cut the weak, cut the ones that are just not smart enough. And then like teach them. And the thing is, at that point, it's big boy rules, right? Or big person rules. They're expected to, at that point, they're all brief. Like once you make it past A&S and get selected.
It's okay to affirm people gender as boys. Like I'm fine with that on this podcast.
Perfect.
Yeah, boys could be half of the available genders that are out there. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
So, but then we understand like, hey, like you have to maintain this standard. Every time you graduate a course, you're at a newer physical standard. You must maintain it. That's it. And then it's expected the whole way through. So, and then we give them the tools to work out and the programming and all this stuff. And then all the way to the end, right? Until you graduate. And then that last standard is what it is, right? And if you fail, sorry, we'll give you another shot. Maybe it'll be from the beginning again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, that's what we're looking for now. And that's what we get. Right. And then we're trying to coach and mentor at that point. Right. I mean, still, like you said, you still hold them to the standard. You know, there's plenty of guys that I've seen where we've washed them back and then they just couldn't catch up or they just didn't. And they're like, well, we got to get rid of them. I'm like, yeah, get rid of them. And they're just like, dude, I'm like, dude, that's the rule, man. Like,
yeah,
you lose. They go to the regular Air Force, right? To the regular conventional force. They can reapply in 24 months. Usually if they do reapply, they never make that mistake again.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's just, it comes down to like maturity thing too. Some guys need to learn by trial and error.
Yeah.
Some earlier, some later.
I got some buddies of mine in the teams that they went to buds and they quit. And then they came back 2, sometimes 3 years later and crushed it and became the most stellar operators that you've ever seen. You know, it's just
one of my favorite PJs, his name is Chris Trisco. He failed NDOC twice. Dude, going through NDOC twice is disgusting. You're just getting your nuts kicked in all day, every day, underwater, all this other stuff. And he was an amazing PJ. Yeah, and it took him 2 times. So, yeah, and he came from services in the Air Force. Like, he jokes about it. He's like, I was the best, like, omelet maker in the Air Force, dude. That's why I went to be a PJ, to challenge myself. You know what I mean? So, you know, the whopper flopper of the Air Force, we would call him.
So you get through boot camp and you get through your NDOC. You go through the training. You have now. What is your first unit that you're attached to? Because there's not like in the SEAL teams, like you have your SEAL teams, and the Special Force you have these groups. You have identifiers for a unit. CCT is a little bit different.
Yeah, so we're broken up in squadrons, right?
Yep.
So you have your line squadrons. You have the 23rd STS out of Florida on Herbert Field. You have the 22 STS out of McCord, Washington, Joint Base Lewis McCord. You have the 21 STS out of Pope, which is now Pope Army Airfield. And then you have Mildenhall, England at the 321st, which I went to. That was my first duty station. And then you have the 320th out of Japan. And then we have another one in Clovis, New Mexico. It's the 26 STS. So I went to Mildenhall. And then right when I got there, like I literally landed and I was gone. Like within I just checked in, got my stuff and everything, gone. I went to go get my JTAC qualification. Like, see you later.
You came back here for that?
No, it was in Germany at that time.
Oh, okay.
So I went to the one in Germany, which I almost flunked. Almost failed it. I almost failed air traffic control school the first time too. I need a lot of reading and repetition, right? You know, just like in the service, I was telling some kids today that I saw, right? And they were just like, how's like the air traffic control school? And I'm like, dude, people go to school for this for like years to get qualified by the FAA. We condense into 83 days. Everything. And they're just like, I'm like, yeah. But we have the simulators and we have everything we're teaching you, and we have the really good instructors. So like I struggled in air traffic control school, but I passed, right? And then I struggled a little bit because I looked at it from an air traffic control standpoint on how to work the aircraft. And when you're in the fires world, it's a little bit different. It makes it easier for you, but also it can make it harder for you.
Last time you were out here, did you meet Morgan? Do you remember you came to train one day at Victory?
Yeah.
And Morgan Walker was there, bald guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bigger dude. So he was in the Marine Corps enlisted as an air traffic controller, infantry, and then he went air traffic control. They got picked up for an officer program and became a pilot. So he had the both sides of the story, and he his air traffic control stories are nuts. The stuff.
That dude, he gets crazy.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that. My brain doesn't work like that.
Yeah, because you're always like working aircraft in patterns and understanding their speeds and where they're at in the pattern and who gets priority based on size, and it's all based on like turbulence and all kinds of stuff that you have to have rules that apply. Like just as we do in the military doesn't mean that we don't apply to the FAA rules. You know what I mean? Like waiting 3 minutes for this aircraft to take off, and once he takes off, that 3 minutes before this aircraft, because it's a medium size aircraft and it has to take off from the same runway, and waiting because understanding wake turbulence when a big air like a C5 takes off, like a jet or a small one just can't just take off behind it, because if he just takes off behind it, the aircraft going to get that wake turbulence and just tank it. It's going to kill it, right? It'll be screwy with it. So all those rules apply. But like sequencing aircraft and stuff like that is helpful. But I still passed, and then they're like, hey, you passed, but you're going to have to go back to your unit and get more training. And I was like, okay, qualification is qualification, right? And then it was just like redundant, like over and over training, over back. Yeah. Being in England, you don't get the opportunity as much to come to the States here. The state guys in the States, dude, they're going to all these ranges and getting quick. It took a little bit longer over there, but our mission there was a little bit different too. We did a lot of airfields, a lot of assault zones, and that air traffic comes into that, and you're like, money. You're just like, sure, all on it, right?
Yeah.
So then, I was at 321st, and then did some more like JTAC training, cast trips, and you start working it. And then the more repetitions, the better, right? And then for some people, because I learned this after being an instructor and stuff, for some people, it just clicks one day. And I've seen it numerous times where guys really, they can't fathom and they're understanding it, all the processes and procedures and things like that. And then all of a sudden, it just, light bulb, ding, and then they got it. It took me that too.
So you were you did the air traffic control, did the JTAC thing, and being over in England. When was the transition from doing schoolhouse stuff to actually getting in there and being embedded with like combat units, so you can get out and do what you've learned to do?
Probably let's see here. Probably within like 6 months, I was with first one was a training exercise in the Mediterranean, actually at a location in Eastern Europe with the Navy element, and learning to integrate with the Navy, like understand them, and like I bring this to the fight, and you're just integrating with them and running with them, training with them, like doing everything they do, and then like seeing the interaction, and you're like, okay, I get it now. And then I actually went with a senior guy. They sent me, we used to call it mini Jag, because Jaguar is our call sign in Afghanistan. So you'd be the mini Jag, so you're like his helper, but you learn to integrate and figure it all out, and then you go on your own. Same thing going out to other countries with the Marines, and the MARSOC elements at the time, helping them out was super fun. Learning, like running the airfield and stuff like that and doing stuff, and then just integrating, always being ready. And then after that, deploying and embedding with ODAs and stuff like that, and figuring it out. Because every service is honestly different.
Oh, I imagine. It's probably takes a little bit of time to get accustomed to their style, because every service has its own personality, and then inside of that unit, they're going to have their personality, right?
Yeah. And always being the Air Force guy, like you have to fit in. You're just going to do whatever it takes. Like, if you're with them at the end of the day, you're cleaning weapons and doing everything, and you're volunteering to do stuff. Like, you're working, because at the end of the day, they need you, but you need them as well. So,
well, I think that goes back to just being a good teammate.
Yeah.
It's like you got to, like you and I always talk about this, like everybody needs their tribe.
Yeah.
And if you're in a environment where it's life and death, like that's your tribe, whether you like it or not. This is not a tribe that you get to choose. This is one that's been chosen for you.
Yeah.
But it's up to you and how you're going to be able to behave around them, like and do the things that are necessary for you to make the mission successful and to work as a cohesive unit.
Yeah, it's the same analogy. Like, I heard this from somebody before. Like, you don't get to pick your parents.
Yeah, it's true.
You work with what you got, right? You don't get to pick your family. Yeah, well, you have. And you love them or hate them, but you still got to love them no matter what. And you're going to do whatever you got to do for them.
Yeah.
But
then there's the family that you choose, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty fun part of life. It's like you get a family that like it's like you got your mom and dad, you got your brothers and sisters, and you got your aunts and uncles, you got all that kind of stuff, and you're going to have weirdness in there. It's some people are going to get along with, sometimes you're not. But then when you have the family you choose, man, that's pretty fun too. I always talk about I have 5 dads, and those dads they've been around way longer than I have. They've been doing things even they've been doing dad stuff, husband stuff, business stuff, speaking stuff, all these way longer than me. I'd be a fool not to listen to them, but I have chosen them and I have placed them in a position of authority over me. But then I have my peers, right? My brothers, like you, right? Family that you choose, and people that you run with, and guys that you can call. I'll call and complain to you all the time. Like, I'm waiting for an invoice. I'm waiting for a therapy invoice from you at some point, because I'm always calling. I'm going, all right, this is what I'm dealing with right now. With who knows what, right? The stuff that we have struggles around with. I'll call him and I'll just be like, this is what I'm dealing with right now, and he's like, cool, man. Yeah, so this is how I would handle it. I'm like, man, I didn't think of that. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Sometimes.
That's the family.
Sometimes it's good. Sometimes I'll be like, actually, don't take that advice. That was bad. Don't do that.
But that's family you choose stuff. And that's good stuff.
No, yeah. So, after that, then rolled into OEF and got rolled with 3312 and on the East and the Konar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Out of Vibration Array.
Yeah.
And then
tell us about that one.
I met those jokers. So it's pretty funny. So I show up in the Cs-47 at night, and my buddy Brandon is meeting me on this quad, and Brandon's in like flip-flops and shorts, and it's the winter and a sweater. This is when he picks me up in a quad. He's like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" And I'm like, "Get off this helicopter." And if you haven't had the enjoyment of flying in the Konar at night on a 47, you should.
So this is Afghanistan, the Konar province, and it's kind of like it kind of sits up against the Pakistani border.
It does,
and
it's literally right on the border.
And it's a little chilly woo.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's like Wisconsin, but with mountains.
They start like at 8,000 feet elevation, 7,000 feet elevation. Super fun. And being from San Diego, California, I'm just like, this is cold. It is cold.
So he picks you up in a quad, and you're just like, dude, you not look around you and see?
And he's like, oh yeah, bro, it's cool, bro. Just grab your stuff. And I'm like, dude, I have like 3 Pelican cases. He's like, okay, cool. I'll meet you at the gate. He takes off, and I'm just like, dude, I'm bag dragging stuff, get it off. The helicopter's like, we gotta go. You know what I mean? They're like, we can't be hanging around here at the bottom of a valley. You know what I mean? At the fire base. And then, so I unload all my stuff and then get in there, and it's because it's late as night. Most of these cats are either asleep or whatever the case. And then I give my hooch, and then next thing you know, I meet those jabronis. You know what I mean? And they just got to
for our listeners. When we had the Nick Wells podcast, you guys might remember when he was on here. He was actually in 3312, which is what you're talking about now. When you met those guys. That's Nick Wells, who was here.
Nick McGarry.
No, I'm sorry, Nick Wells. Well, Nick Wells was there too, but he wasn't on the podcast. But Nick McGarry was on this podcast. But you met Nick Wells, Nick McGarry.
Yep. Sergio Garcia. Bob Cusick. Jim Lotica. Old man Jim. And then so I meet those cats and they're like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And they're kind of like a little bit standoffish, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go again, right?" And I'm like, "Hey, Brandon." I was just like, I called him Mole. His nickname was Mole. I go, "Mole, are these guys cool?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, everybody's cool." I'm like, "All right, dude." I was like, "They seem kind of standoff." And he's like, "Yeah, I would too with you." And he was like walking away. I'm like, "Hey, dick." It's just like, "No, man, they're really cool. Like, everyone's cool, man." I'm like, "All right." And then just went to work, right? Start understanding the landscape and looking at everything and just from everything that I learned from a lot of like the NCOs that I learned off of there, because some of the NCOs I learned off of, one of them was very specific. Chris Beggs, prior Marine, recon Marine, and stuff like that, and just really talented at tactical things, right? But just, I think at that point in his career, he was a team sergeant, so he was like, he loved to teach, but he also loved to let me learn by my mistakes too, and then teach off that, right? Another guy named Steve Barons did the same thing, would teach me good stuff. Great NCOs that I learned off of, like a guy named Nate Salamini, Nick Seibel, Mo, Seth, and some other cool dudes. And it just, you learned a bit from each one. The guy named Jamie Light and stuff like that I would learn bits and pieces, and then essentially I just took it into like a bowl and try to integrate it and then mix it, and then, consistently remind myself what was, how to learn and how to prepare and stuff, and then I just applied that out there, right? Yeah, from there it was good. Because anytime you're doing a changeover like that, you got to get a handover, and then you're rolling with each other out and on ops and stuff like that. You can come back.
So this is about the time we meet Robbie Miller too.
Yeah. Robbie was fiery.
Yeah. So people that don't know Robbie Miller, he posthumously got the Medal of Honor.
Yep.
At on this specific that I'd like to ask you about next.
Mm-hmm.
But he has an amazing story. The stuff that he did on that was just mind numbing. But then also the rest of you guys, the way you guys rallied after that to recover his body, is phenomenal. So you guys get a call to go out and do a recon of an area, to try to get an idea as to what's the head count of the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot.
It is. Yeah.
Because at that point too, when we rolled out for that too, we had done some previous things in that area, and I had not understood the true landscape. So when like going through selection and all these things, they talked about like, you don't know where you're gonna go, but you need to be prepared. You have to train. This is why you have to work out. This is why you have to run. This is why you run with a ruck, like all these things all the time, because Mother Nature doesn't care. Mm-hmm. She gets 100% say. Majority of the time she wins. You know what I mean? You might get lucky. She might be merciful to you. You know what I mean? And then like going out in some of these places, and then literally,
especially in the middle of winter in the Kunar province.
Yeah.
At midnight, 1 a.m, it's going to be.
When you're rolling out and you get to another fire base to link up with another team, and you walk out of that fire base to get to a certain area, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to hit this point. I'm looking at the map, and I'm just like, hey man, the elevation change is like gnarly. The intervals are crazy here. And they're like, oh yeah, they call that stairway to heaven. You're just like, huh? And they're just like, you'll see, because they've flown by it or they've been near it. And then you're just like, dude, in your head, you're like, it's those moments where you're like, dude, I can't believe it. Well, some of the moments in my head, I'm like, my recruiter's such a freaking liar. He's so a liar. I'm going to shoot that guy when I get back. Like, I can't believe I'm going to walk this, Tactically, with a ruck, multiple radios. And that time, big radios too. At the time, we were rocking PRC 117 Foxtrots with 2 big 5590 batteries, and you have to take 2 additional ones that are big bricks.
Yeah. These batteries, dude. These batteries are massive.
Massive.
They come in like a big wrapper that you're not even supposed to rupture, Yeah. So like it's until you are ready to use it.
Yeah. Nuts.
So you guys are rolling out for the 3312 with those guys, and you guys are going to go do this recce. Tell us about what happened there.
So we get the task to go out to this recce, right? And I'm like, okay. So just like anything else, I'm starting to put my JTARs out, my Joint Air Tactical requests out, to make sure I'm in the ATO cycle, and then make sure everything's there. We get in our trucks, we start rolling. Where we left at an array, super grateful for paved roads in the United States. Like super grateful. Just because my kidneys would like barely survive. the rough road, the only road too. It's not like multiple lanes. It's one dirt road that rolls, and you look over to your east and there's the Conard River. It's deep, it's fast, it's gnarly. And I'm like, ugh, like hoping to God, you're like, I hope we don't get hit with an IED, because if we roll in there, we're toast. And then start rolling out, and then we finally get to a point called Checkpoint Delta. And Checkpoint Delta is the last the northeastern last checkpoint the United States had. And Bob Cusick is talking to this Marine element there and convincing those guys, you need to come with us because we need a partner force.
Yeah.
Right? So they finally convince the Afghans to go. The Afghans are like, where are you going? Hell no, we're not going up there. Like, no way. Like, well, you'll get murdered. You know what I mean? And he's just like, no, it's going to be good. And Bob's doing his magic, right? Being a good ground force commander and a team leader. So convinces them, jump in the trucks. And then we start cruising, right? And at this time, all I have on station right now is, at the time, is an MQ-9, right? And a Reaper drone. And he's like, basically doing surveillance on us, and I'm like having him shift and look at things and give me updates of the target area and where we're looking at and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden this dude's like, hey, we're having a malfunction. We got to check off station. And I'm like, huh? Like I'm like, what? And he's just like, yeah, we're having a malfunction. We got to get this thing out of the area. And I'm just like, hey, Bob, I was like, we're losing this Reaper. He's like, what? I'm like, they have some kind of malfunction, dude. And they were checking off station. He's like, well, give me something else. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I'm going to try. You know what I mean? So in the process, I tell the Reaper, I was like, hey, I need someone to backfill you.
Yeah.
So get on the net, because I could too. But the thing is, they're faster. They're in the air. And for me to call up and get all that across when they can send the shot directly and I can use them as a relay, was just more effective. And they're like, yep, we got some guys coming, you'll get a flight of F-15s, and they'll be checking in. And I was like, okay, what's the call sign? Blah, blah, blah. Can have them contact me on my net, on my TAD. And the TAD's a tactical air direction net. Cause every JTAC has one that's theirs in theater. So we're cruising. And when I say we're cruising, we're just like getting beat up the whole way. And I'm just like, dude, this last road we're going up there, you start going up to like Gowerdash and where we're going to go. It's just the river now and a small road. I think I'm in truck, if I remember, I'm either truck 2 or truck 3. And then we come to a halt. When you come to a halt in those areas at night, super eerie, because the mountains are just straight top. You're sitting ducks. So I'm in the back of the truck with a 240 on one side and a 50 on the other, and I've got them tethered down. And when I would try to take my 50 on the swivel and try to bring it up, like upwards to look up, and I can't see, like I can't clear the rock. And I'm just like, I'm so screwed. We're so screwed. I swivel it across and you can see the river valley. You can hear the river just like roaring, and you see, and you're just like looking, you're like, if we were to be attacked right now, 100% screwed. You're just fish in a barrel. They're just shooting downhill and see you from a distance, and you're screwed. Like, God forbid they would came out with like, a ZSU or something like that and roll it out and toast. Dishkas, whatever they had. So, but then we come to stop. I'm like, why are we stopping, Bob? Because I'm telling this next aircraft that I'm like, hey, we just came to a stop and I got to give them an update on location, because they weren't in yet. And there's a boulder in the road. I'm like, what? And they're like, there's a boulder in the road. This just tells you the ingenuity and the determination of the enemy at this time. Boulder, bro. I'd never seen a boulder in my life until I got out the truck, my rifle, and I know demo, so I'm going to go help Hav out, and Jim Lodiga, the team sergeant, and it's just this boulder. And I'm just like looking at him like, how in the hell did they get this in the middle of the road
Yeah.
in this part of the world? Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah. You guys get the demo out?
Yeah. So having them, they're just like talking about, we're just going to blow it. And I'm like, how are you going to blow this boulder, dude? This thing is like, dude, they're going to hear us. They're like, well, we can't get there if we don't blow it. I'm like, all right. So I'm like looking around, two back. I go, hey, Bob, they're going to blow it. And he's like, yup. And I'm like, okay, never mind then. He's the boss, right? Jump in the back of the truck, and I'm just like cinched down. I'm like, got my radios. I got my GPS and on the last grid. I got my map, and I'm like, because when we blow this thing, I'm thinking like the whole hillside is going to erupt and we're toast, right?
Right.
But blow that thing. Amazing. Drove right through it. I'm like, when you're in those valleys, that sound echoes for miles. And I'm like, how did they not hear this, right? So I got one of those planes looking to the spot. Nothing. He didn't even move, right? Get to another one. Another boulder.
Awesome.
I'm like, even closer now. I'm like, damn. In my head, I'm just like, good on you guys. Like, good for you. Like, you ain't messing around. They're prepared. Because they know that's the only route. And, when you think back, I think long and hard. I'm like, yeah, of course they put boulders. Why? Because none of them have cars. We're the only ones with gun trucks. And certain vehicles that travel in that area don't travel that far with a car. Because they'll get robbed, blown up, killed, or whatever the case. Because this is like Indian country, man. This is like for real. So I'm like, blow the next one. I'm like, all right, that's clear. We keep moving. I got these F-15s on station, and I'm in contact with my TACP buddies that are attached to the 173rd, and I'm telling them about this, and they're just like, all right. So, I mean, this is going on for a while. Those Strike Eagles they came to help out, and then they ran out of gas, so they had to check off station. I was like, hey, we got nothing for a while, but we're gonna get something back, right? But there's a process, right? Kill boxes and all this other stuff, and they have to check in with a certain net.
Yeah.
Then they get handed off, and they come to me, whatever the case. So we're rolling. We get to this high ground, and we're looking, and we're like, okay, can see it. I got this now. I've got this other drone that showed up. This ISR asset didn't have any rockets or anything on it, and he's looking at it, and I'm just like, okay, that's it. You know what I mean? And this is 2007.
And they're looking at the location you're going to go.
Yes. And we're on the high ground, way on the high ground, and you see the river is deep in there, and I'm like, oh, we're going to go in there. So we're like, okay. My first thought was like, how are we going to cross this river? I knew there was a bridge, but it's dark, right? And on my NVGs, I'm like looking, and these are back when we had like PVS 14s, not like what we have now, you know what I mean? So I'm just looking, I'm like, dude, that bridge is all bombed out.
Yeah,
like
bombed out green bridge.
Yeah, I'm like, we can't. I'm like, we can't take the trucks over there. And then talking to Bob. Bob's working it, and he's getting like all his direction, and we're looking, and then we're just like, okay, if they see us, you know what I mean, and they fire, then we're gonna fire back. And I was like, okay. So I'm out of the truck for a second, and I'm like trying to look, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, well, damn. And I'm trying to stick like my rangefinder like through my nods to try to get a look and be like, maybe I can get a more accurate grid, you know what I mean? Because if not, I'm looking at my map. And I'm like, man, I can't get nothing. I'm looking, nothing. And I turn around, I just jump to get back on the truck. And then right when I get back in the truck, dude, right across the valley, shots, and then first RPG goes flying, and you're like, oh snap, we're troops in contact. And in our world, man, like as a JTAC, the thing I want to say so bad, in most cases, is like, Jaguar is now troops in contact. That means bring it. Like we're in the fight. Aircraft hadn't come on station yet, and we're just like, it erupts. You know what I mean? The only way sometimes I can, and this is hard for people to understand unless you were there. But it's like, you ever been to a stadium when you see people take pictures with their phones or cameras and flashes in a stadium? It's what it was like, dude. You're just like, oh snap. Like it just got real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, oh snap. So I'm talking to Robbie, and I'm Robbie. Hey, he's behind the gun, and he's just like, I'm busy on the 50, I'm sorry, no, on the Mark 19, like getting after it, like doosh, and I'm like, in that instance, it's a target-rich environment. But then you're like, okay, which should I prioritize? Which are the targets we're going to hit? Because you're getting shot at from a million places on the hillsides, right? And I'm talking to Bob, and Bob's like, hey, I need Cass right now. I'm like, hey, we're working it, dude. Like, Cass is coming.
Is this after you've crossed the river?
No, we're on the hilltop.
You're still on the hilltop.
Yeah, and we initially took fire, right? So we're lining it up, and then, like, we're going back and forth, and there's a lull, right? And that lull, because this is a long time ago, so for me to try to remember it, but like there's a lull, right? And I finally get aircraft on station. My TAC Ps that were over there pass it over. Two really good guys. One I give a lot of credit to, Jig Thompson, and then another guy, Jeff. And Jeff was wizard at being a JTAC, and he was just pushing me aircraft. I'm like, all right, cool. So we finally get these Strike Eagles, these new ones that check in, giving them grids, things like that. And there's a lull, and then I'm talking back and forth to Bob. I'm like, how many bombs you want, whatever the case. What do you want to do? Do you want to destroy? Do you want to neutralize? Do you want to, or do you want to like decimate? And he's just like, just bomb, he's just bomb the fucking place. And I'm okay, because I'm a young E4 dude. I'm like, yes, sir. You know what I mean?
Right.
Gun ho. And really what it comes down to is, get grids, get everything going in like minutes. And I'm like, yo, bombs away. And then it's like silent. And it's just like.
Is that when you guys decided it was time to just to walk it on in then? Because you can't go any further with the trucks, especially if you got that bridge in the condition it was in.
Yeah, so they're like, boom, bombs impact, right? A little bit more gunfire, boom, bombs again. Dead quiet, right?
Yeah.
And I go, all right, Bob, what do you want to do? He's like, he gets a call, and there's like, they want confirmation, they want a BDA. They want a battle damage assessment.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, okay. So, we can't just leave the trucks, right? So you got to have a team with the trucks. But the thing is, the trucks were directly overseeing, like, just almost parallel to the site, So half the team, we dismount, and Bob's like, you're coming with me. I'm like, okay, cool. And we're just like figuring out, we got to walk it. So quick plan, and get our troops. We line up, start walking. We got the Afghans up front with Robbie because he spoke Pashtun really well. And he was up front. We start walking it down. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, my hairs on the back of my neck are standing up.
I bet.
So, I'm like, okay, at this point, we get down to the bridge, and we're trying to, like, at night walking, you're trying to walk across these bridges and bombed out. There's like some rebar, there's some concrete, there's just holes everywhere. Last thing that somebody told me was like, hey, dude, there was a U.S. service member that fell into this river from here and straight drowned because he couldn't get his body armor fast enough. And it's so cold. I was like, thanks for telling me that we're crossing these holes everywhere to get across this bridge. So we get on this bridge, and then we start walking this path, and I'm like, this is the most narrow path I've ever been on. Like, holy crap. So we're in our file formations, and then I'm like, and on top of that, we're in 2 file formations rolling in. There's not a lot of room to be like separated laterally, you know what I mean, to offset each other. So we're just like nut to butt. So we're rolling through. A set of A-10s check in, and I'm asking him for coverage. The A-10 driver was awesome, but he was like, dude, I can't see shit. I can't see anything. Like, it's so hard to see. He's like, even with MBGs, I don't see a lot of movement. I'm like, all right, there's no movement. I'm like, hey, Bob, update, no movement. Everything's still there. It's all quiet. He's like, move, press, or moving. So we finally come down, and then I start seeing those terraces that lead to the river, right? And I'm like, I see the terraces. I look to the left. There's like a small rock wall right next to us. I'm like looking around, and that's when I see like the opening of the hillside, because one opened to the south and one opened to like the northeast, because we were coming from the north, coming down this way. And then, like, I'm looking forward, and you're just in a patrol, you're patrolling, you're walking forward in that formation, because the site is actually another, like, 100 meters on the opposite side in a building. So we get that opening, right? And all I heard was, like, yelling, like, back and forth of Pashtun. And then you heard the old, the old saying that they would say, it's just like the old Allah Akbar. And you're just like, oh, shit.
And it's on.
And it's on. And then it wasn't just like a standard AK. It was like, and you're like, shit, they got machine guns and they're dug in. Right when that happens, boom, hit the deck. Like, hit the deck and, like, look, and I'm like, yo. At the time, my call sign was, like, Jaguar 07. And I called the A-10s. I was like, yo, Jaguar 07, troops in contact, stand by for following directions. And there's, like, troops in contact, standing by, using the overhead, right? And it's just a gunfight going on. And I'm super young, and I'm just like, what do I do? Like, I already know what I just said, but what do I do now? Like, how do I help, right? Yeah. So I get up on a knee, and I look left. Nick McGarry is, like, right, not too far from me. You know what I mean? And then I see Nick turn over and shoot, and then I look, and there's a dude, because it's dark, right? And my MVGs are right on me. There's a dude probably like 7 to 8 feet from me. And I just see him, and I'm like, just give it to him, dude. Right? I used to complain about suppressors. Like, dude, it makes my rifle so heavy. This really good controller I knew named Nick Sabo, who's like, you never, ever, ever shoot without your suppressor. And I'm like, yeah, but I got radios, I got jets. And he's like, yeah, but you're screwed if they know where you're shooting from. And I was like, I guess. It wasn't until then, dude. Like, I understood muzzle flash. Like, muzzle fire and muzzle flash. I understood it. I was like, thank God I have my suppressor.
Yeah.
And then give that dude 2, and I look, and then you just hear fall back, and we're just, it erupts, dude. Like, the hillside's like firing again, and you're like, oh snap. So you hear fall back, and I'm looking, and I hear, I'm hit, like, and I'm just like, who's hit, Bob just got shot. You know what I mean? And I'm, not too far from him. And Joe Wilson,
but meanwhile, Robbie
had already run up the hill,
because he had a belt fed.
Yeah, he had a 240
shorty, which is
gangster.
I'm talking like muzzle flash for days.
Yeah,
and loud. And so when he's firing, because you guys were all firing suppressed and everything else, he like basically broke free from you guys.
Yeah,
and went out into the open.
Yeah, so he broke free, and because you heard the exchanges, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there trying to talk to aircraft and give them an update, and it happens so fast, right? Because this is way late going into the morning already, right? Super late at night. So you heard the exchanges, and then, like, I looked, and I seen, like, Robbie running, and then just shooting, and it's like, fall back, just giving it, right? So you can, at that point, like, dude, this is bad. It's the classic, like, you're in the kill zone, you're in the kill box, you're in the X, you're in the like, almost like the funnel fire. There's nowhere to go. I can't go back. If I go forward, I'm going directly into it, even more. And there's no, like, the only exit, which, if you think about it, like, tactically, genius. The enemy walked us into that. They knew we were going to go in there and do it, and they opened up on us. With the only real out you have is the river. Good luck. So you're just like, damn, right?
Yeah, good use of it. They were using the train.
Oh, yeah. And you think about these Mujahideen been fighting for years, you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure they did to the Russians a lot, So, in the fight, shoot a couple rounds, take care of that. I look back, and my instinct is to go with Bob because he's my ground force commander, right? But then, at this motion, it's like consistent, like time slows down in the gunfight. Like it really does to me. It's slowed down because I'm like looking at target, like everywhere. I'm like, where are the big machine gun? Like, where's it, the mass of fire coming from? And I'm trying to figure it out. A10's talking to me. I'm trying to talk to him and get him to talk on. I'm like, dude, I got so many damn targets. I don't know which one to hit first, right? So, I start maneuvering forward and to get to a better position where I can see everything. And that's when I hear Hob Mackey. And Hob Mackey's like, and this is in my brain because it happened so fast, right? And through time, you can't tell how time is moving because you feel like it's going slow, but it's actually moving real quickly. And I hear Hob Mackey, who was the engine, he was a Charlie, the 18 Charlie. Great dude. Big dude. Like 6'2". I would have tons of jokes with him because he was a Latter-day Saint all the time. Like I asked him, like, do you guys go on missions and stuff like that? And he's like, yeah. Where'd you do? Or he was like, Compton. I was like, you went to Compton? He's like, yeah. I was just like, well, makes sense. Yeah. I'd send my 6'2", 260-pound dude into Compton too. Why not?
Yeah.
To go talk about Christ. But yeah, super good dude. Love the guy to death. And he's like, hey, we got to go help Robbie. Because at this point, Robbie had already run into the hills, hit those dudes, hit him with 249, switched the mag out, completely changed it, shot another one, and threw hand grenades, and then was pulling out because it was just too much. So, because I heard, I'm hit, I'm hurt. Now I got a guy to my south and one to my north. And it's like the conundrum, it's the double-edged sword. You're gonna hurt either side. Which do I go, right? But I know Joe Wilson's back there, and he's taking care of Bob. Javier's going in there to go get Robbie, and I'm not gonna let him go by himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna let's go. Like in my head, I'm like, gotta go, right? So we sprint. I didn't see Nick McGarry because I saw him shooting, and then like either from a knee or like almost perched up, and ran right by them, like dead in there. And at this point, we find Robbie. Robbie's on the ground. He's on his back, and he's just like, just trying to hold on. He's just the arrival and the reality of me, of what I signed up for, like the consequences. The consequences I know, like when they say, man, you'll have teammates, like people would tell me like, dudes are going to die. They're going to die. You're going to see it. It's just going to happen. It's war. First time, like seeing somebody die. On top of that, my friend, who was my truck, like gun truck mate, like we would exchange, and I was having him in the initial volley, like mark targets for me so I can hit it. Until that Mark 19 went down. And then he switched over. But like hearing that response of like, and it's really morbid, but it's true. Like when you hear someone trying to survive and blood is coming out their mouth, and you see, like he passed in like no time. So me and Javi get to him, and Javier's trying to do a check. And trying to, like, we got you, Robbie, things like that. I'm literally trying to see how I can help. And then I look up, and there's just dudes everywhere. And I'm just, like, shooting. We know we're in the kill box. And was like, we got to move him. Because Javier looked at me and goes, Robbie's dead. And I was like, fuck. And it's just, like, anger. You know what I mean? Because like you said, you choose who your friends and your other family are, right? Nothing's worse than losing a family member.
Yeah.
So you get angry. So we're sitting there trying to grab Robbie, And
because at this point, man, the fight is not.
it's not even close to over.
Yeah, at this point, the fight isn't just like, hey, let's break contact, get off the X. You can't, because Robbie's out there and you can't leave his body, because if you do, Pakistan is just over a hill and his body's going to end up in Pakistan. We're not going to get it back.
Yeah.
And so you guys are now fighting over your friend's body to get it back. Man.
Me and him are having a legitimate argument.
You and Hadi?
Yeah. Legitimate argument on what to do while shooting back at people. At that point, it was just so overwhelming. I said, we're going to hold, and I turn around, and I'm talking to the aircraft, and at that point, I'm like, man, I got to do something. So at that point, I'm on my back with an ISLID at the time, the smaller ISLID. And
Did you explain what an ISLID is?
it's just a IR marker. It's a strong laser marker. And I'm on my back with Robbie. Hobbs trying to shoot at people to keep us safe, right? And I'm working the aircraft, and my first actual strike is a 30 Mike high angle strafe gun run from an A-10 at 45 meters. And it was happening so fast.
Ooh.
It was happening so fast that I didn't even have enough time to generate a 9-line. I went with a call for fire. Like the aircraft knew that I was GTAC qualified, and I strictly went with a call for fire format because it was so like detrimental. Like I was on my back, laying down, and things were whizzing by my helmet, like, you know. And I'm just like, I got to get it to stop. And I'm putting my arm out, dude, like laying on my back, like looking and just marking targets and having them come in. Critical mistake at the time. Super young, right? Understanding like chain of command, like no radio comms with Bob, right? The warrant Joe, who's a prior at Delta, is working on Bob. I don't have comms with Jim Lodiga because he's fighting, right? I can't get him on the net. The aircraft asks for a ground force commander's initials, and I just pass on mine. I am the closest, with Javier, closest to the fire. Like, we are the closest. I just gave him mine.
Yeah.
I didn't know what else to do. It totally breaks up.
Did they take it?
Oh, yeah, he took it. That dude knew. So I had a discussion with that A-10 pilot later on, and he was like, I've never heard someone under such gunfire in my life. And I knew what was happening, and I knew I had to help. That pilot went on to be a U-2 pilot, which is a great thing in the Air Force. Like when you get elevated to do that stuff, it's way cool. You're like really good. But yeah, so on my back, like literally running gun run after gun run after gun run. And I'm shifting like, hey, from the last round's impact, shift 55 meters to the northeast, you know, marked by ISLID. And he's just like running in, gunning it, boom, boom, boom. Right. And then after like,
effective?
Yes, to calm it down. Like once we came in with an A-10, you know, and started doing gun runs, it like stopped a little bit, right?
A-10s are so awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. It's pretty gnarly. So, you know, little did I know later on in my life I'd be doing it again, but like at 10 meters and less, you know. Yeah, the impacts were gnarly. You know, we're just trying to hold Robbie's body. Javier's, you know, shooting on the rear 6. You know what I mean? After like the third gun strafe, it was like, okay, we got to move. We got to move Robbie's body. We try to pick him up, like in the middle of picking him up, dude. Like trying to pick him up because he's got all his kit, 249 that's left over. Like we checked him, no Winchester on frags, Winchester on M4 mag, Winchester.
Explain Winchester. We have people that aren't going to know what Winchester is.
He's completely out of ammo.
Yeah.
He's shot. All of it is dry. And try to pick him up and get him, and still, like Javier got shot in the, I'm pretty sure he got like shot in either in the front plate, like he was trying to pick up over the front, and I was trying to pick him up in the rear, like grab his leg so we can try to, you know, throw him over his shoulder. And Javier like takes one right in the chest, right in the mag, right? And he's like, oh, he puts him down. I look to the south, and there's 3 dudes crawling, and it's just like rifle over, boom, 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 give it to him, look back, more rounds, like, dude, like, and Javier's like, dude, we're gonna get killed right here. And I was like, I don't care. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you're going to move. I'm like, I'm not moving. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here and fight. And that's the decision you made on your own. Like, I didn't like plan that. It just happened. Like, I'm going to stay here and fight. If I fucking die, so be it. Like, I'm not letting him take Robbie. And he was just like, because in the Air Force, we're always like the lowest ranking dudes that show up to these teams, because when they're Green Berets and stuff like that, they make like E6 and E7, on completion and all this stuff. So all E7, he's like, I'm giving you an order that we're going to leave and you're going to move. And he looks over and he looks to the like southwest of us and he goes, we're going to go over there. I look back and I'm like, it's a terrace. And I'm like, no. And he's like, you will go. And I was like, okay. I was like, you go first. Right? So Javier's, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to cover you. So when I get there, I'm going to tell you I'm set. And then you're going to come. And I'm like, all right.
What was the range and how far away?
Probably about 45, 50 meters away on a downhill slope. Super fun. Yeah, especially for someone with bad ankles.
Yeah.
So he goes hauling, right? And I'm sitting there with Robbie and I'm like in the prone, right? And I'm just like scanning, like, oh, fire. And then I look over and he's like, I'm set, hurry up, right? So like, get up, radio and packing everything up, like, get up. I start running. So remember, Javier's like 6'1", 6'2". He's a big dude, right? I can't pay attention. I didn't think about it at the time because, I'm running for my life at this point to get to cover. He's on this terrace and he's just like neck, like upper chest, like out like this. Platform stable, like shooting, right? I'm 5'8". I jump to clear it and I'm like, oh my God, boom, dead into that face. Dude, my nods break, and he's just like, hey, what are you doing down there? I'm just like, getting up. I'm like, oh, dude, I didn't know it was, he's like, dude, I'm tall. Did you not see this? I'm like, no, it didn't. And I was like, I was too busy running because when I was running, they were shooting at me. You know what I mean? Right. And I didn't know at that point, man, like they had whizzed some like right in my pack. Like my pack had holes in it. That's the only time I can think of that they would have gotten, but like they shot through my pack. Like luckily I didn't get shot in the back or, anything like that. But like, yep. So I eat it and I'm just like, ugh. I get up and I'm like looking. I'm like, I can't see shit, dude. And he's like, well, get a better position. So I position myself like probably about 7 meters to the north of him, to his left side. And I got a good position and I'm sitting there. And the thing that sucked is because our team across the river saw us completely and they could not fire. We were right on their gun line. So, and they couldn't really like lob them either. You know what I mean? So we're there and at that point, dude, like I'm getting everything out and the A-10, is running out of fuel and some Strike Eagles check in again. The Strike Eagle checks in. Sorry, that's California Burrito coming out. It's amazing. And Strike Eagles check in, and I'm working grids and I'm working targets, and I'm having a hard time with this Strike Eagle pilot because he just checked on station, and I'm trying to pass a 9-line to him, and and that's when I started realizing things were getting wonky. Like my GPS didn't work, and I figured out like, dude, I'm getting spoofed. So I just put it away, pull my map out, and I'm doing like I said, like all my conversions by hand, writing it all down, things like that, passing the aircraft, looking up, Javier shooting.
Spoofed, for people that don't know what spoofed is.
Oh, spoofed means your network or your GPS signal is being jammed. So it's being jammed by somebody. Being that close to the Pakistani border, man, I can't confirm. I can't deny. I don't know. But the only people that have the capability is a country that can do it, and it ain't Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Right. We would see some kind of weird stuff flying back and forth from that area, helicopters and stuff like that before. So we're always like, is that the ISI? I don't know. Nobody knew. Like, it was kind of weird, but it's weird, that place that my information, all my equipment was being jammed.
So
those guys don't have working water or electricity.
Yeah. Yeah, they pour in holes.
How are they jamming my stuff?
So now it's like you got to go full analog.
Yeah.
On it.
Straight up. So I converted. I'm having these conversations, and then the pilot's getting grids, converting from that long to MGRS, giving it to him. He's zooming, and he's having a hard time. And I'm like, dude, I need it. And I was giving him a 6-digit. He's asking for 8-digit, and we're going back and forth. I'm like, dude, I need bombs now. Like, I ain't got time to play. You know what I mean? And I get it from his standpoint. It's his bomb. He's about to pickle it. You know what I mean? And when I say pickle, it means let it go. Like, let it off the rails, off the jet. So we finally get there, and that takes like 6-7 minutes, right? And plus, they're still shooting at us. So I'm like trying to not get shot in the helmet, in the head. Because the only thing that's standing out is my left arm, my head, and my map on the dirt on this terrace. Well, Javier is shooting back and forth and like moving one side, down, up, shoot from another, whatever the case. I'm trying to keep an eye on Robbie, and to make sure they were trying to grab him, because they were trying to maneuver down to go grab him, and then finally a pickup of, a 500-pound JDAM just, shuts him up. You don't really understand the full power and brunt of it until you do a strike like that.
How far away did that impact from you?
Like 75 meters.
That
gnarly.
Yeah. That'll give you a headache.
Like, hits, and it's just like the amount of power that comes, and you're like,
that'll make it piss blood, man.
And then you're just like, oh, snap. And then on top of that, the fallout, all the rocks and all this other stuff. In my head, I'm like, fuck, I just fucked up Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
I go, Javier, I'm like, dude, we fucking hit Robbie. And he's like, Robbie's dead, dude. He's just like, keep fighting. All right. So by this point now, daybreak's starting to come up. We're in comms with the guys over there. We've called for a QRF. First batch couldn't come, so a second unit came to come get us, come help us out. And those guys they were legit. They came with their partner force. There was like 50 of them, I think, that came. And at this point, they're just like, hey, collapse back to the CCP where Bob was at. And they're trying to keep him stable.
CCP is a casualty
collection point, yeah.
Yep.
Which was back to kind of like towards the original place where we first got engaged. Behind these two trees and stuff like that you actually see when you start seeing daylight. Oh, there's trees here? Because everything's at dark,
Nick has a funny part of that too.
Yeah.
Where a guy kept popping up from behind a tree.
Yeah.
He shot a guy, then the guy popped out again, so Nick took care of it. The guy pops out again. Nick took care of it. Guy pops out again. Nick's just like, how many times do I got to shoot this guy? And he went over there and checked out the tree. There was 4 bodies.
Yeah, there's 4 bodies there. There's like dudes everywhere, man.
Yeah.
And I didn't even see at that point. I'm so focused on the original first level of landscape. I wasn't even really paying attention as much to this on the high ground that I didn't see.
Mm.
Like, I didn't see there was a shack up there. And there was a dude up there, and I'm pretty sure that's the dude that shot Bob from up there.
Mm.
Yeah. So we're doing this. Our partner force, like, I'm on my back, right? And I'm looking at the grids again, and I'm like, okay, everywhere I marked where I hit, like on my map, like I bombed here, and I'm looking, and I look up, and I see this like face, and I'm like the face popped up like 10 feet, like, and I'm like, oh, drop it, rifle, and it's one of our Afghans.
That's close.
Yeah, and I was just like, I was going to shoot that guy right in the face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That dude's foot is wrecked. Bullet straight through it, man. It's like hanging. His foot's jacked.
Yeah.
He's got another Afghan with him. And we're like, we got to push it that way, the casualty collection point. So Javier and them move. We send that guy first, right? because at the end of the day, it's their country, right? They're the ones fighting for it. Why us go first when the Afghans can go first and let them run to the casualty as a team, right? And they maneuver and try to cover fire from them, drop another bomb, things like that, and then get them cover. And then Javier's like, I'm going to move the casualty collection point. I'm like, all right, I'm keeping eyes on Robbie. And I'm just like, acquiring targets, shooting, strafe. Keep going, just keep doing it, right? And then finally there's like a lull, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, hurry up. So I'm like, all right, it's daylight now. And I'm just like, I'm trying to look. I'm like, okay, how many mags do I have left? You know what I mean? I made this decision. People always tell me go light because you have a radio, like the power is in your radio with the bombs in the aircraft. But I learned throughout my deployment out there, like you can never have enough ammo. So I went heavy, like heavy mags, double stack stuff.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, I'm like halfway through. I'm like, crap. So I'm like, okay, I keep my eye on Robbie. I look, I tell the aircraft, hey, I'm running the casualty collection point that I told him about. And then I just like trick it, dude. It's so cold that it's ice too. I'm like slipping and falling. It looked like a freaking Folly video, dude. Slipping and falling, getting up, slipping on ice here because the terrorists come down, and you're just like slipping everywhere, like hand on the ground, just running with a rifle, trying to get to the casualty collection point, and I get to where everyone's at, and I get back to this one area, and the only cover was this small terrace that was like 3-4 feet tall, if that 3 probably, and I just like sit down on my back. I'm like getting exhausted, dude.
At this point, how long have you guys been in this fight?
Dude, we've been in that fight since like, 10 p.m. at that point. It's already like 5, 6 in the morning. So, I get to that point, and we're looking back trying to keep Robbie, and we're just like a lull in the fight, trying to give updates to aircraft. We got a medevac coming, things like that. Medevac first starts showing up, and there's like, gunfire, everything pulls off, suppresses some more, hit him with the bombs, and then finally comes in, lands. It was so cold, took a smoke grenade, tried to chuck it. Dude, fuse wouldn't even go off because it was so cold.
Wow.
And I was like, because at this point I'm like, dude, like,
what are we talking, like 10 degrees? 0?
It's probably in the low 10s.
Yeah.
In the single digits.
Yeah.
It's cold, dude. So chuck another one, right? Nothing. I'm like, that's impossible. They're like, it's too damn cold, bro. Like, it's landing in the snow. It's too cold. And I'm like, crap. Medevac wants to get a good location. The only feasible one is where we're at, literally. So we maneuver, make a big circle, basically, or half moon around it. And I'm like, there's 2 of us. I whip out combat controller's best friend is a VS-17 panel. I don't need JTAC, really, but VS-17 panel, like, on a knee, like, did you see me? Like, do you see me? This is where we need to land. And they're like, yeah, we got a copy. I'm like, get back to cover, right? Because putting yourself out like that, it's just like, shoot me. First of all, you got a VS-17 panel is a bright orange panel. You can't miss it. Like neon orange, almost like. And you're just like out in the open. You know what I mean? Helicopter finally comes in to land. The casualties that got on, and then with Bob Cusick, Javier Mackey, no, Bob Cusick, somebody else, they took off. Now our QRF is there, and we're condensing this plan to go get Robbie, right? Because one thing that really sucks, and it bothers me a lot, is that like when I was in that defensive fighting position trying to hold off, in Hav, and I could see during the day, like they're still shooting Robbie. And I'm just getting angrier and angrier and angrier. I'm like, he's dead already, dude. Like, you don't need to shoot him anymore. And this just shows like the utmost like inhumane type of value for life that they have. Like, your teammate's dead? Yeah, it's the enemy. Like, we're enemies, right? But he's dead. And you just keep shooting him. So I would just punish them. Like, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to punish you until the end of time. Like, I will continue punishing you until there's no more. So we're sitting there and gather this plan, come up. Like, a mortar round impacts near us. And I'm just like, I was on the side of this truck. Because the partner force that came in trucks. like light trucks, not our big gun trucks that are heavy. So I'm like, how the hell did you even get that truck across the bridge? Like, so I'm buying a Toyota.
They drove it across that bridge?
They drove Hiluxes across it, dude.
Impressive.
Crazy. I was like, I'm buying a Toyota.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there on one side of the truck, like looking at everywhere I shot, because now I've changed my position, right? So I have to reorganize everything. I know I'm spoofed. My compass wasn't working. And I'm like, well, I know I was in this area, and this is the degree of, magnetic heading that I was using. So I'm like trying to get, like, to see if my compass will work. I'm like, okay, it's getting me a better calculation, just a better viewpoint and more accurate. I'm like, okay, I'm on the ground with a map, like orienting it. You know what I mean? At this point, I'm getting multiple aircraft. So now we're really in business, when you got H-64 Apaches, you got F-15s, you got A-10s, B-1s checking in, everyone like ISR, they're all talking to me. And I'm just like busy. So I'm trying to pass a scheme of maneuver, how we're going to do this and go recover. So I'm having this moment, and I look at Nick McGarry and I'm like, yo, when are we moving? He's like, you're not going anywhere, dude. He's like, you stay right here and do your magic. We're going to need you to drop bombs before we even go in there. And I'm like, okay. But I'm like, no, I'm going. He's like, dude, he's like, if you die, he's like, we're screwed.
Pretty good point.
It's a hard pill to swallow, dude. Yeah. So I maneuvered next to this tree on a knee and had everything, and I was talking to the aircraft, and then they started pushing, right? They're pushing on this hillside from north to south. And you see them, like, there's gunfire going off. So that means there was more dudes hitting in the hills that we didn't see, that these dudes and their partner force are just wrecking the whole way, right? And I see them get to this casualty collection point. All right, and before that, I dropped like 2 more JDAMs. And then I'm watching this process. I'm looking and scanning. I'm talking to every aircraft. I'm doing the, I got H-64s hitting the house on the hilltop. You know what I mean? Rockets. H-64 that broke off to the north, and he was like, hey, and he's like, I got guys coming in from the north to the south on the higher. I'm like, clear to engage, dude. And you just hear, and he's just smoking. That we didn't see those guys from the high ground coming from the north now to us, and that Apache is just like gun run, coming back. He's like, you're clear now. I'm like, cool, because in essence, we wouldn't have seen that. Yeah. You can't see the high in the hills in the brush that they're in. You just can't. They're sneaky. So, they finally bring Robbie back, and that's the first time, like, that I was able to kind of like contemplate, understand it's a lifeless, like, is gone, right? And I was looking at him, and I'm just like angry to the point I want to cry, like infuriated. And Nick comes over to me. He's like, hey, bro, I need you to get together. He's like, I need you to focus. He's like, Robbie's gone. Looks at, like, I'm like on knee right next to Robbie. And I'm looking at him. I look at Robbie. I look at him. And then he goes down and he closes Robbie's eyes. And then for some reason it was like, because I was looking at his lifeless, body with eyes, and I'm just like, and I'm just like angry. And he goes, I need you to focus, and I need you to do your job. And I'm like, okay, copy, right? I go up to Joe, the Warren. I'm like, what do you want, Joe? He's like, I want you to set that whole mountain on fire. And I was like, okay. I'm like, we'll hit all. He's like, and I want you to hit everything behind that. And I'm like, I can't. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know what's back there, dude. Like, I still gotta run by the rules of engagement in some instances. I already broke enough rules by giving a ground force commander's initials of mine. I call fire piece at danger close. I was like, we don't break any more.
Good move, by the way.
Yeah.
It'd probably save a lot of people just doing that.
Yeah. So
I know you've gotten in a few arguments with the fast movers on radios.
Yeah. So I was like, I can't see who's back there. I don't know there's women and children back there, dude. I can't do it. And he's just like, okay, we'll set that whole hillside on fire. And I want it all locked down and in that valley too. And I was like, all right. So I just went back to work, dude. I just started working, A-10 Strike Eagles, just bomb, until everything was done. They're like, all right, we're done. We're moving now. We're exfilling. And I'm like, okay. So we get Robbie, and then we walk back out, right? And we're walking back out, we're crossing the bridge. The trucks go first, or one truck went first, and then, because they had like a dish gun in the back, man, you know what I mean? Or a heavy gun, and we're cruising down the back, and we're humping it, and I'm moving, I'm talking to aircraft, and I'm looking back, and then it's just like dead, like there's nothing. Like they didn't want, I think at that point they knew that they were not going to inflict anything, so it's better for them to either hide or they were dead. And the majority of what we saw, like in reports later on, to find out, they were just dead, most of them, you know what I mean? But it was like the hardest thing, because one of the key points that I was striking, it's like they just kept coming out. And I'm like, how is this possible? How are they coming out of this? I was hitting rock sides that were so big. I've never seen rocks so big. Through like understanding a little more intel and things like that, they had basically built a tunnel. So it was all defilade for them to cover. You could hit it, you could do whatever. You weren't going to phase that big rock. I'm trying to move the earth. We're talking 30,000+ pounds of ordnance let go, barely denting it. And that's how they were coming back out. So I think one of them ended up hitting hard enough that it shut it down. It closed it, so they couldn't, which is probably the most area we're taking fire from that we just didn't see. But we get across, oh, take that back. Another helicopter came, landed, picked up Robbie. Javier got on board and took off. And then we walked out, and we started getting out.
By now it's late.
Oh, yeah.
It's late. You're going across that bridge. You can see how bad that bridge actually is.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is sketch.
Yeah.
Like, the sketchiest I've ever seen.
We went back and meet up with the guys.
Yeah. So at that point, man, I'm getting on the net. I'm running out of battery juice already again, because I'd already switched out batteries during the process. I literally ran out of embedder batteries and everything. I had to take a battery from another dude, because you always carry extra batteries. But what do you do? Like, you can't carry batteries forever. So I switched batteries out, things like that. I shift over to
the casualty count was on the other side.
I think it was in the high hundreds. So
high hundreds. And there was just a handful of you guys.
Oh yeah. Because after that, the aircraft is there, but I'm checking all this aircraft off station, and I'm just having them watch, and I push them to the north and to the west, right? Because I got artillery, and I got 155s and 120s at an array, and I'm just like, dude, send the rounds. We start hitting with 155, just on the way out, just over and over and over, and that was like the anger, right? But I know I knew there was some still there, and they were a threat. So therefore, for me, it's just like hit them with artillery, like punish them, and this is what we did until we rolled out.
What was the mood like with the guys when you got back to your cob after that? Were you guys at a cob?
At a fob.
Fob?
Yeah.
Fob. When you guys got back to your fob, what was it like when you guys got back?
Tough.
Yeah, but
during the process too, I found myself in moments asking for God.
During the fight?
Yeah.
What did that feel like? And because how they say there's no atheists in a foxhole. It's like this old phrase. I think where that come from. I think I came out of Vietnam or something like that.
Yeah.
But when things get super hairy like that, like
yeah.
what's your reaction? What's your reaction spiritually? What's your reaction? Because you're not thinking about it, right?
No, you're not thinking about it.
People are always, and it's kind of like, if you shoot at me, I'm probably not going to go full Barry Pepper and start quoting scriptures.
Yeah, no.
As I'm punching large gaping holes in your organs, like not going to happen. I stubbed my toe. I'm probably gonna cuss. So people oftentimes will ask me, they say, when it gets super squirrely and super hairy, like do you pray? And I'm like, you know what? You don't think about things like that when things are like when you're in a super dangerous situation. And I'm not talking about just combat. I'm just talking about in general and in life. People would think that that's the time that you're going to cry out to God. It has happened. I'm sure some people have, but I'm wired more to be present in that moment, and I'm going to do that knowing that God's going to show up how God shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And God's going to show up when he shows up. You know, it's and me crying out or not crying out is one thing, but I have a job to do, and I'm going to do that. And God knows, because he and I chat all the time, and he's there. He's omniscient. He's omnipresent, and he's going to be in that situation. It's just because I'm not praying doesn't mean he's not going to show up.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was sitting there trying to pray the rosary or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I found myself in moments like, God, if you can hear me right now, I just need you right now, real quick. I just need to get to this next step.
So you found yourself actually doing
in my head, not openly saying it, like quietly, like here, like thinking about like being next to Hav in that one position.
How am I gonna?
God, how am I gonna get out of this?
Yeah.
Like, and if I ain't, like if I'm not gonna make it, then understand that I'm gonna do what I have to do.
Yeah.
Right. You always think about like, give me the skills, like give me the strength, especially when you see one of your teammates die.
Yeah. Since then, how's it been for you since then? The trauma of it, the stuff that happens, the stuff that, that we carry around as military guys, some of the things that you can't unsee, the things you can't unhear, the things you can't unfeel. What happens to that stuff, and how'd you work through that with this?
I made a, and I'm more than willing to accept mine, like hold myself accountable on certain things. When I make mistakes, like, it's like I felt he gave me a pass. He let me survive. And after that, I made a mistake. I actually had this discussion with my pastor a long time, a couple years back, like 2 years back ago. And I said, I found myself in the time after that my life had become where I idolized war more than God. And there's only one idol, right? God himself, right? No other
gods before me.
Exactly. Right? And I think that's kind of a problem for us, is that you start idolizing the thought process of going to war, the urge to go, the revenge.
Well, I think that we crave the test.
Right, but you can do it now, obviously way more mature now and understanding you can do it, but still understand that God will keep you in place and keep you in line morally and ethically on the straight line, right? It was more like everything was about training to go to war. My thought process wasn't so much always just like, I was thankful, I was always thankful to God, but it was like, I'm thankful to God, but I'm going to go wreck house and I'm going to go do this next. And I can't wait to get this on, right? And it's almost like a thirst that you want, you want to quench, when it should be, you should be giving thanks and praise for having just what you have and just being grateful. And if you're given the opportunity again, then you have
to. Like this, though, God made you a certain way. And he made you a absolute, walking weapon to be used at a certain time, at a certain moment, for a group of guys that needed you to be who you were. And if you're anything less than that, then things would have been drastically different. So when you were in that situation, God looks at that and God's pretty secure. He doesn't get bent out of shape if you're really head forward and leaning in when it comes down to war. He goes, that's my dude. That's how I made him. But there's the time where it's just like, all right, God, you and me, and I just went through some stuff, and I'm going to need you in this situation that I just went through. I'm going to need you to kind of show me the way to get out of this, because I'm in a dark, dark place right now, which is a byproduct of being how he created you.
Correct.
Is that right?
No, that makes sense to me. I guess, I mean, I never looked at it that way as much. But yeah, there was plenty of times where, honestly, sometimes I asked for forgiveness. I didn't always feel like doing some of this stuff that it was right. Not with like the rules of engagement or things like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm in a fight. It's a fight to the death.
Yeah.
It's not we're not going to come to terms and be like, hey, good job. We'll see you next Tuesday for the next fight. You know, like,
yeah. Jiu-jitsu bump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's walk away, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a fight to the
There was a
death.
tap.
You know?
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, the only grace that I would get in my head was that, well, God told me to do it. Like, this is what I was meant for, so it's okay. Like, it's meant to be. He writes the page every day. That book of my life is that page. And then the next chapter, it's already done. I just have to live it.
Mm-hmm.
I just choose to do it gracefully through him or not. So, but yeah, it was tough. Like, yeah. And then being back at the fire base and going through the process, getting to see him while they clean him up and stuff like that. And then the service and stuff like that, you know, was just rough, you know?
But that wasn't your last tick either. I mean, you had a lot more going after that where, you know, where you, I mean, one of them, you ended up getting shot. You were on another one where, you told me about another one that was also quite hairy, a lot of bombs.
Yeah.
You know, and so it became your lifestyle. It was who you were. And that was during the course of a good chunk of time right in there with your deployments where it was just on, and it wasn't relenting, and you were still, every time going out the door, you're like, yep, let's do this.
Oh yeah. I mean, every time we either got off a 47 or a 60 or, you know, ground vehicle movement or on foot, like I always would tell myself, like, you know, like, just one more time, you know, just keep an eye out for me. I just need your strength right now. In my head, you know, I never said it, never openly said it, just in my head. I'm like, I just need this right now. Like, give me the strength, right? You know, let me survive. I want to see another day. So yeah, I mean, but I also look at it this way too. Like, you're right. Like, some of our individuals across our service, I know that, for instance, you've worked with some good combat controllers. There are so many good out there. They would have done the same thing, you know, or better. More than likely better, but we just get the job done, right? But at the end of the day too, during the fight, like you know, like our biggest priority at that point, like I could care less about that HVT, the BDA. It was about getting Robbie. Like, I got to get him home. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, it's like you got a mission set.
Yeah, do my part.
You have a tasking. And this is the objective.
Mm-hmm.
This is the intent of the target package.
Yeah.
However, for me, it's different, right? And and seeing Robbie out there laying in the open, for you, the mission was different. Yeah. You know, BDA, recce, got it, whatever. I'm coming back with my buddy because I'm not leaving him here.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
And that's huge.
Like, it's funny, like me and Hav would talk about the argument and stuff like that, but like we were literally arguing about who's going to stay. Like, should we stay or should we leave? And I was like, nah, dude, we're staying. Like, we're going to fight this shit out. Yeah. At that point in time, being in that box, I didn't think there was an out. It was stand and fight to the death, especially if they came even closer. Cool. I got a rifle, I got hands. I got a knife. I'll do what I got to do. You ain't taking him. You know what I mean? So, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's an experience. I learned one thing. Jim Lodiga was out there and he was like, dude, you're being baptized by fire. That's what he told me. He's laughing about it. 'Cause you know, and sometimes we just find humor in the worst of shit.
Yeah.
And I experienced in selection and training, stuff like that, and in war, like cracking up. You know, he's like, hey, he's just a real big gunfight. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, holy smokes, man, you're being baptized by fire. That's awesome. And I'm like worrying about my mat. I'm like, shut up, Jim. I'm busy. Like, you're over laughing. I'm working over here. And then get after it. So, but those guys, man, you know, when and it's crazy because, you know, you get to read about stuff, right? And people read about stories about guys that receive the Medal of Honor. I have a good friend of mine that does a lot of wounded warrior support and ran at his ranch and hunts, and like he supports a lot of things, and you get to see about Medal of Honor recipients and ones that he reads and stuff like that, and he talks to and he hears those stories from them. Like I met Medal of Honor recipient from the Marine Corps, Woody, gosh dang, super guy, Iwo like young, basically private, you know, in Iwo Jima, basically ran out of ammo, grabbed a flamethrower off some dead teammates' back and went in there and killed everyone with a flamethrower by himself at the age of 18. You know what I mean? Young, short guy.
Yeah, he's still alive.
No, I think he just passed.
If he's not, he just died.
Yeah,
because I just heard an interview with him. Not even, I bet 3 weeks ago. It might be. They might have. Well, they're probably airing it because he died. Because how long ago did he pass away? If you know,
not too long ago.
Like this year.
Yeah. So, okay. And when you talk to this guy, I met the guy at the White House. Coolest guy ever, right?
Yeah.
Most humblest human being ever met. And, you know, to hear his story and talk to it and get to talk to some other Medal of Honor recipients and things like that, I understand. And when you're reading the book, it's not, but like what I saw Robbie do that day was insane. Like clearly in that moment to visually see someone charge gun nests by himself with a 249 shorty and basically get into the bunker basically and just straight smoke people and then switch to another one and then know we're in such a bad spot that he's got to come back and say, dude, break contact. You really can't, like, man, it's hard to describe, you know, I don't have the descriptive nature or the vocabulary to be like how crazy it was. And the amount of heroism it takes to go do that. So when they're like, hey, you know, they're going to write up Robbie for the Medal of Honor, I was like, 100%. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen, dude.
Yeah.
I've seen some crazy things too after the fact. I've seen some crazy things, but like that,
yeah,
insane. Like, there's no doubt. If it was like me thinking, like in the time and place, the amount of aggressiveness to go in there and fight the enemy, knowing like I'm going to die in this process, but I don't care. Mm-hmm. My teammates matter more.
There's guys that are watching this that are they're dealing with their 3312 moment, their Kunar province, their Gordarsh Bridge, you know, what is it that you have to say to them? Because they've heard one of your stories, and there's a bunch after that. Like you and I have hours on the phone, just like trudging through just our personal stuff. You and I bounce a bunch of stuff back and forth off of each other.
Yeah,
but guys who are going through their version of bad, and I always tell guys, it's like it's not. Don't compare yourself up against this guy who's done these.
Yeah,
you know, Rob Gutierrez, Nick McGarry, Robbie Miller, you know, and all the other guys that don't look at that. You have to look at what you're doing, and you have to understand that if it's worth fighting for, it's worth dying for in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's me, because I haven't experienced what you've experienced. My version of bad's gonna be different than from yours, but still, even when things are bad, I'm like, yeah, no one's shooting at me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm most likely not going to get IED'd on my way home from the office.
Right.
Probably not going to happen. But I have things that I go through that I'm just like, ooh, that was sporty. And I gotta, you know, I'm glad I'm going through it, because I'm going to need the faith I get from that to get through the next thing that I have coming up. I always love it when somebody is a believer and they understand the the principle of trial and what it's going to produce.
Mhm.
And I love hearing it. I love hearing advice from guys like you for those of us that are going through stuff that we look at and just say, man, I don't think there's a way out. What do you have to say to that guy?
First and foremost is you look back, right? So those people that have those teammates that were with their teams and had those things and like there's like no way out. Like you got out of that one. So there was a way. There's always a way, right? But you know, I look back with all like the teams I've been with and stuff like that, and I turn around even when it's like tough or whatever the case, and I end up being grateful.
Grateful. That escapes a lot of people these days. Gratitude.
Yeah.
Operating from a position of being grateful. That's powerful.
And here's the reason why. I'm grateful because, hey, God put me on this planet to do X, right? Mm-hmm. In that process, you learn. I'm super grateful. I've seen 3 in the GWAT time, right? The actions of 3 different Medal of Honor recipients in the same objective. One with Robbie Miller, one with Ron Scherer, and one with Matt Williams. I'm grateful to know that those men exist, right? Unfortunately, Ron Scherer is a good friend of mine. He passed away from cancer, but Matt Williams still exists, right? From the same fight. And I'm grateful to know that those individuals existed and that they fought for our country, but they taught me things, right? Things that they go through, that I was able to experience it and know that at any known point I can rise to the occasion because they did. I can get there. And as long as you have faith, you'll get there, you know? At the end of the day, they did superhuman things as humans. We're all human. We're capable of doing so much more. I'm grateful to know that it exists. And it's one of those things that it's a part of my book that, not like some book that I'm writing, but like the book that I have that's being written for me, that these are my experiences that I learned from X, Y, and Z, that whatever I'm doing, like they gave up their lives to do this, I can suffer through whatever because they would want me to, right? You know, Ron and Robbie Miller, they would want us to be better. And for some reason it drives like a grateful attitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sometimes painful, right? But nothing great is easy or worth going through without a little bit of pain and suffering.
Yeah. Because if you see the price tag, you might not buy it.
Yeah.
You know, but if you just endure it and just stick through it, you get to the end, you're like, man, I did have it. And that's one thing I always talk about in the teams too, or military stuff, like even what you went through with your NDOC, right? Mm-hmm. Is your body and your mind are both have their own different thresholds, and your brain is going to try to shut it down
until you know
before your body will. Yeah. This body you have is capable of 10 times more than your brain tells it that it is.
100%.
And if you just get out of the way and just let it play out, you're gonna be like, man, I got through that.
It's like problem solving, you know. Say you have a big boulder in front of you,
right?
It doesn't stop you from going.
Yeah, especially if you have a bunch of demo in the back of your truck.
Yeah, you can either blow it up, or guess what? You can go around it, go over it. You can dig under it. You can do whatever you can get through it. It's just an obstacle.
Yeah. Also, sitting there and whining about it's an option too. And that's what a lot of people do now. You don't have to go far for that.
Like, oh my God, there's walls there. Like, okay, climb over it.
Yeah.
Go around it. Run your car through it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, there's still people that struggle and stuff like that with those things, and it's like, man, be grateful that you got to see that you shared a life with them, that you got to experience that, because no one else will ever again, especially if you lost teammates. Like, be grateful that you had them. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's better to have, it's better to have and not need than need and not have, right? And learn from the experiences and take that experience to get better. I'm trying that all the time, and I still struggle all the time. But it's okay. I have help. Yeah. So, so it comes down to that, you know what I mean? And it's gonna be all right. There's always a way out of it. There's the right way out of it too, right? There's the easy way and then the hard way. The easy way is going to give you like the quick satisfaction, whatever the case, but that's not going to last forever. Because with the trials and tribulations and go through the hard way and its long-term effects, long game. I do see like now too, a lot of people want the short, easy answer, the short, quick success, and then they're going to hope to get it again. And if they don't, then they're like, oh, you know what I mean? But if you just played the long game and just did it the hard, like, I'm not saying like the hard as in like make stupid decisions, just be hard, like work hard, right? Get through that. That the long-term end or the long-term type of success will be there for long standing, in whatever you do. And then just like keeping your faith, because if you don't have that, you don't know how you have nothing.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, you could, there are those people that are like, they don't believe in it, but like I've known a lot of somewhat like, I guess who would say atheists that turn around and start believing, specifically like operators that I knew older and later on in life. They're like, I get it now. There is. And they have this faith. And all of a sudden it's just like reinvigorating. And I'm like, that's what God does.
Yeah.
They see it. So,
man, we've been talking about doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's like seriously been like over a year. We've been talking about getting together and getting you on the podcast, and I'm so glad that it finally worked out. I was so stoked when you called and said, "Yo, I'm coming to town."
Yeah.
Let's connect up and let's train.
It's super fun.
Yeah. So thanks for coming out and especially just kind of just stripping down to the metal for us, and letting us see like what's kind of a glimpse into your life, the things that you've experienced, and a look at the combat chassis that you operate from. Man, that's powerful. So, man, I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you, and for you. Thanks for looking out for my dude. And so, but thanks for coming out, Rob. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. I'm grateful for like our friendship, and it's more like you said you choose your family, right? The other family, and I'm glad to have you in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Brother. And it's been a pleasure, dude.
Awesome.
So
guys, listen up, man. I mean, this was different. I've never done this after a podcast, but I wanted to just spend a minute with you, just tell you that you're going through something right now, and I know you are. You're probably looking at your life, and you are taking inventory of all of the traumas that are happening inside your life. And you're looking at it from a position of, how am I going to get through this, and can I get through this? Well, I think the story that you just heard of what Rob went through, where he didn't even know if he was going to survive, but he had a fight that he had to fight out, and he was committed to it, and he wasn't going to stop. He had an objective, and that was his friend's body. He was fighting for his friend. See, what is the consequences of not being in the fight? Well, Rob's body disappears forever. Rob's not there. Now it's going to be for that family, so that they can have their loved one back, and they can go through the proper steps that you go through when you're gonna say goodbye to a loved one. That was his fight. And the guys in it to his left and his right. What are you fighting for right now? And is it a righteous fight? You have to remember that you have to choose your battles, but you don't get to choose your obstacles. You don't get a time on the obstacle course if you miss an obstacle. Your time, they stop the timer, and they just, you have to start over. You have to do it again. You have to take on every obstacle, but don't have to fight every battle. That takes discernment. It takes wisdom. You have to be able to do that the right way, and you have to be able to choose wisely. How to think about the things that you're going through is found in James 1. You want to look up James 1. It also is going to talk about wisdom and discernment. As one scripture, James 1, 1 through 12, it is going to cover all of that for you. I say you dive into that right now. Take a look at it, and we'll see you on the next episode of Bram Radio. Love you, man. You got this. You can do it. Stay dangerous.